Well, the launch of what is slated to be the world's largest IPO ever is expected to be delayed following the drone attack on Aramco's oil facility in Saudi Arabia earlier this month. The attack on the world's largest oil company crippled the country's crude output by an estimated 50%. The Financial Times reports that multiple people have come forward and accused the Saudi government of attempting to strong-arm or coerce some of the wealthiest families in Saudi Arabia into investing in its state oil company. David Sheppard joins us now from London. He's the energy editor at the Financial Times. So, David, what exactly is the Saudi government doing to pressure these families into investing in the state oil company?
Well, some of the pressure is quite subtle. We're dealing with a system and a kingdom whereby many of the wealthiest families found family members or indeed themselves imprisoned in the Ritz-Carlton luxury hotel at the end of 2017, start of 2018, where many of them had money extracted, where there were reports of torture, according to people familiar with the families. Some of that money is still tied up and is essentially controlled by the government. And there seems to be an indication that the thought is to put some pressure and say, this money's tied up, why don't you invest it in our grand IPO, potentially at a price higher than some people in the market think it's worth?
So Prince Mohammed bin Salman has given the Saudi Aramco IPO an initial valuation of $2 trillion. Fair estimate?
Well, yes, he said about 2 or 3 years ago that 2 trillion was the mark that he thought that this company should be valued at, making it far larger than any publicly listed company anywhere else in the world, including your Amazons or Apples or anything else. The issue is that many people in the market think that this is potentially too high. He's trying to value it as if it was a regular oil company like an ExxonMobil, a BP or a Shell, without recognizing that it carries substantial political risk, given the majority of the company will remain essentially owned by the Saudi government. And the Saudi government is, of course, overruled by a single royal family. So there's also, we've seen the additional risk that this company faces very clearly in the last few weeks. About 10 days ago, there were attacks on Saudi Arabia's facilities, which Western powers such as the US and UK have blamed on Iran. No other oil company has that concentration of assets in one country or one place that increases this risk, you know, in possibly one of the most volatile regions of the world, in the Middle East, that this company could come to harm.
You know, these recent attacks on Saudi oil fields, have they impacted or changed the government's approach to launching the IPO?
I mean, there's certainly a sense that this could be one thing that could be delayed. The government has clearly come out and said they remain committed to the IPO and have emphasised they expect to do the initial listing, which is likely to be in Riyadh on the local domestic exchange, within 12 months. That's slightly different from what we were reporting just prior to the attacks, that they were looking at doing maybe 1% or so in Riyadh by the end of this year. Has it been delayed? Quite possibly. There are reports around that. Certainly, this will increase concern for investors. You know, people were always aware of the risk of a confrontation or something blowing up in the Middle East, but this makes it all very real. I mean, they lost 50% of the oil production overnight. They have been able to bring back the oil production relatively quickly. Just before I came on air, we reported they've got it back to around about 8 million barrels per day compared to 10 million barrels a day before the attacks. But certainly, you know, seeing missile strikes and drone strikes on facilities in Saudi Arabia is going to focus investors' minds.
You know, that was my next question for you. You mentioned the security angle to it that makes people a little bit nervous. Has that changed their approach with these attacks? Has it changed their approach to gaining these investors?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yes, I was just asking about, you know, with these attacks and concern over these attacks, has that changed their approach in trying to secure investors? Are they a little bit more jittery in investing in a company like this?
Well, Aramco itself has, ever since the attacks, has been desperate to emphasize what they call the company's resilience. We've had the oil minister of Saudi Arabia come out, the CEO of the company, all say no other company in the world could rebound like this, could come back so quickly, could have, you know, this amazing system that they can essentially, in the terms of the oil industry, sweat, work it really hard, even while they're repairing the damage, to keep getting the oil out, to keep oil supplies going to the market. And they're keen to emphasize that not a single barrel for exports to international customers in Asia or the United States, for example, have missed a single shipment. But so they're really trying to push this angle and almost spin it into a positive. But at the same time, you speak to potential investors in this IPO in the West, and of course people are concerned. You cannot have a company getting hit by missiles and drone strikes, right, sitting just some of its key facilities just a few hundred kilometers with the border with Iran at a time when tensions are incredibly high, not just between Saudi Arabia and Iran, but between the US and Iran, and to a degree between the UK and Iran. The potential for a confrontation there is high, and that's going to weigh on how people assess what the ultimate value of this company should be. Most analysts, compared to the 2 trillion that Mohammed bin Salman says the company is worth, do think it's probably closer to 1 to 1.5 trillion, might be a fair valuation. They're not saying it's a bad company. They're saying it carries risks.
All right, David Sheppard, thank you very much.
Thank you.